I am in my car, as always. But what's up, good people? Hopefully, y'all have had a great day. Um, it's gonna be dark. It's dark outside, and I'm currently driving. But I wanted to share what dropped in my spirit as I was driving, and hopefully, you're able to get something from it. And yeah, but I believe, I'm confident that you will. But the topic for tonight is going to be, who does your name glorify? Who does your name glorify? There was a clip that I saw of an individual who sought fame. And it was funny because the person in the video was talking about how, you know, people couldn't handle fame because of the things that come with it. And it was very interesting to me, the things that they were listing off, because all of the things that they were listing off were things that I unfortunately experienced as a targeted individual and someone that's been cyber stalked and gang stalked by people of all types of different calibers and affluence, right? And so them stating that you couldn't handle being famous because of all the different things that comes with it was entertaining to me. But it's also interesting, right? Because when you think of people who want to be famous, that's something that they desire for themselves, right? For their name's sake, right? And so some people, yes, they become famous, and yes, their name glorifies God, right? But not everybody who desires fame is desiring fame to be able to glorify God. They desire fame because they want to glorify and promote and exalt themselves, right? They don't want to wait for God to do it. They want to exalt themselves, so they seek and desire after fame. I don't know if you have been paying attention to the things that have been coming out or that have been exposed throughout these past few years concerning the things that come with fame. And so, hey to who has joined, I'm talking about who does your name glorify? And so when you seek after fame, right? When you desire fame, you are desiring to glorify your name, right? You desire for your name to be seen and heard and exalted throughout the world. And that's something that you desire for self. Hey, how you doing? Thank you for joining the live. However, when your name glorifies God, God gives you the fame. It's not something that you seek after. It's not something that you desire. Half the time, you don't even want to you don't even want to deal with people at the level you have to deal with them, especially depending on the different trials and tribulations that God will take you through as he's growing and maturing and pruning you and preparing you for the position that he's going to purpose you in, right? This also sparked from scripture. I'm driving, so I can't open it up. Hey, everybody that's joined, thank you for joining. I can't open up to the exact scripture. However, it was Aaron and Miriam, and they had gathered together and were gossiping or talking about Moses behind Moses' back. And of course, God being God, God heard the conversation that Aaron and Miriam had concerning Moses behind Moses' back. And because God heard the conversation that they were having towards or against Moses, God used Moses to gather Aaron and Miriam, and then he corrected them in the presence of Moses. And see, Moses was an individual whose name glorifies God. When we think of the disciples, when we think of different individuals and characters and people throughout the Bible, right? Their name glorifies God. If someone was to say John the Baptist, you're going to think John the Baptist, but you're going to think Jesus. If someone was to say Apostle Paul, you're going to hear Apostle Paul, but you're going to think Christ. If someone was to say Adam and Eve, you're going to hear Adam and Eve, but you're going to think Christ, right? That is when your name glorifies God. When you think of other individuals, right, you might say whoever your favorite whatever is, artist, musician, entrepreneur, whoever, right? And I'm not saying that all people who desire to have better or to have more are their names don't glorify Christ or don't glorify God. That is not what I'm saying. So if you take it that way, you choose to take it that way. But what I am saying is there are certain individuals that, regardless of the rooms you mention their names in or how you mention their names are automatically glorifying God, right? David, his name glorifies God. David was given the fame and the prestige by God. It was not something that he sought after. It was something that God gave him. It was something that God positioned him for, and he stepped into it because God positioned him forward. When we think of these people who desire fame and fortune and all of these things, and they want to be seen amongst the world and be amongst the stars, these are people who are desiring these things for themselves. They're not necessarily always desiring them so they can glorify God. And you can tell who is who by the things that they're willing to compromise for to obtain the fame, the wealth, and the fortune, right? You can tell whose name glorifies God by the type of material that they produce with their art, with their gift, right? Their gift makes room for them because their gift glorifies God. And being the individual that I am, being a targeted individual, being watched, being monitored, all of the things by all of these different type of people, one of the things that I have realized, right, I can go anywhere. I have been a few different places, and regardless of if I speak or not, regardless if I say my name or not, my presence irritates people, not because I said anything, not because I walked in the room and introduced myself, hey, I'm Kashaya, how you doing? Not because I cursed somebody, not because of anything that I did to make myself seen. It's the fact that God's presence walks with me. I didn't have to do anything. It's just how it is because of who God is. It is not because of me. I am the vessel, I am the body that God is using for his name to get glory. And I'm sure some of you are built the same way, right? You're built in a similar way. I can't say the same way because we're all uniquely and wonderfully made, but we are not all necessarily the same, right? But certain people, their names, their presence, it automatically glorifies God. As a targeted individual who has experienced different things because I'm targeted, because I'm gang stalked, one of the interesting things is that you realize, especially being a targeted individual who has faith in Christ, right? You realize that a lot of people's faith is not cemented like they believe it is. A lot of people's faith is wrapped up in how clear they can see blessings or good things attached to people. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge that despite your faith, despite your belief in who God is and how God shows up in your life, people only know faith when it's attached to good things. People do not want to associate with Christ, or they don't want to associate Christ's goodness with the struggles that come with being a believer. They don't want to associate that God is walking and talking and speaking and guiding someone when they cannot see physical manifestations of good things, of wealth, or all of these different things attached to an individual. They want to see it to believe it, and that's not what faith is. Faith is believing in the unseen things, right? But people who have built a name and a relationship that glorifies themselves and not God are the same ones who make easy disciples when it comes to being pick-me's to go against targeted individuals. Now, if you have joined any of my lives or even any of my videos, I often go on tangents. That's how my brain works. I don't wear a mask because I don't have to. I just show up as who I am. And I'm about to go on a tangent, just so you know, because this, what I'm about to say next, does not have anything to do with who does your name glorify, but it does have something to do with what I was saying about being pick-me's or disciples of chaos when it comes to the enemy moving and orchestrating different things, right? And so, as a targeted individual, and I've experienced the ugliness or the hate from people simply because of whose I am, right? Who gets the glory from me, which is Christ. Because of those things, and because of Christ getting the glory out of me, I experience a lot of hate, a lot of shade from people who swear up and down that they serve and believe and love Christ, and them sometimes are the main people who have something negative to say. They be the most intellectual, beautifully, eloquently speaking individuals, and it's like, but sis, where's the shade coming from? You have your own glow. Is the glow that you see somebody else carrying disturbing you? Do you need a new Whole Foods bag? Do you need me to get you one? I know you can afford one. You just gotta sell whatever it is you create, and I'm sure you can make the funds to get you your own bag. What I'm saying is, some people's presence disturbs other people so much, because what they don't realize is who they think they serve, they truly don't serve. Because what they serve is what they can see. They serve, they honor, and they believe in only what they can see. They don't have the faith that endures or that stands that Christ asks us to have, which is being able to believe in the unseen things. And so, for instance, when we consider a lot of the things that have been exposed, or a lot of the people who may want to speak out, but they're afraid to speak out because they have experienced or they understand the weight of when you speak out against someone who has the means, the affluence, the wealth, the material things that a lot of people idolize, that they know that the weight of backlash that comes from being bold enough and courageous enough and strong enough to speak despite the pick-me's that are tied to these people of influence, because their faith is tied to the things that they can see. A lot of people don't want to deal with that. A lot of people don't know how to carry that cross. A lot of people retract, right? They retract from having to even carry that cross because it can be too much. But see, when you are doing the work of God despite the hate that comes with it, yes, I'm circling back. Moses was doing a job where everybody hated him. Everybody hated Moses. They were mad that Moses was trying to free them from Egypt. And they preferred to be in the bondage. They preferred the bondage over walking with Moses. Where Moses was taking them didn't look like it was going to end up in the promised land. So they rather complain and bicker against Moses and plot and scheme behind Moses' back. And Moses said, and God called Moses, and Moses went and gathered the very same people that were putting his mouth on him, just so that God could correct them in front of Moses. Yeah, that's the time we living in. We living in a time where people are afraid to speak up against individuals that have the means or the wealth, because they already know how feeble people's minds are when it comes to believing in the seen things. Not believing in the unseen things, but believing in the seen things. And so you have all these people who say, oh, well, their talent afforded them to be able to do this and do that. That had to be God. And it's not always God that gives these quote unquote blessings that people feel like are attached to wealth and all these material possessions that people have, right? Their gift made room for them, but their gift does not glorify God. It is actually doing the exact opposite. It doesn't glorify God. Some people whose name glorifies God, they don't worry about what you got to say about them. They don't worry about how they look because they know that their name is attached to Christ. They don't worry about what you got to say. They don't care. They know that their strength and their essence, it comes from who they're backed by, which is Christ. A lot of people who are so attached to their name, it's because they're still attached to it. They have not died enough to themselves to be like, my name is just a name. But it's who my name is attached to. When your name is attached to Christ, your name being a thing, well, God already made it that. God makes it that. God makes it a firm foundation. God makes it a strong and a sound name. It's nothing that you have to do. God just does it. People whose name is still attached to themselves and they have not attached their names to God, oh, those are the main ones who feel offended when you say something about the work that they've done. Because their name is not attached to a good thing like Christ. Their name is not attached to a strong tower like Christ. Their name is not attached to a strong foundation like Christ. And so when you touch their name, it's like, oh, well, you touched me. But see, the difference between a person who is attached to their name still and a person whose name is attached to Christ, Christ touches the person whose name is attached to him. The person doesn't have to. But see, the person who's still attached to their name, oh, I got to do something about that. I got to defend me. I got to go all out and do the extreme because, well, you touched me. But see, when you're attached to Christ, Christ touches those who touch you. And that's the difference. That's why you can have peace in the midst of so many things being thrown at you, because your name is attached to something greater than yourself. When you've done all this work to be seen, to be known, to be certified in the group. Y'all remember the group? That, who was that? Ice Cube was talking about being in the group. I don't know if he's still talking about it now, but y'all remember that? Ice Cube had that video out talking about if you don't want to be in the group, that I don't like when you don't want to be in the group. Y'all remember that clip? Maybe you gotta Google it. It's on the internet somewhere, so you know, it's free to talk about. It's on the internet. Anywho, when your name is attached to Christ, Christ does the work for you. Christ was the one who checked Moses and Aaron. Aaron and Miriam, Lord. Christ was the one who checked Aaron and Miriam because they were putting their mouth on Moses. And he did it in front of Moses. He did it in front of Moses. A lot of people get offended when they hear certain people talk about their favorite people because, well, their life might not look like their favorite people's life. And so they feel like when that person is speaking, well, you're speaking for yourself. God didn't give you that to speak. God didn't tell you to say that about that person. God didn't tell you to tear down that thing. God didn't tell you to do this and do that. We don't see the fruits in your life. And when it's funny because the fruits that they're talking about are all material possessions. It has nothing to do with the fruits of the spirit. They're looking for the fruits of the flesh. That's really what they're looking for. They're looking for fleshly fruit to confirm that God is with you. And God is not confirming that he is with us through fleshly fruit. He's confirming that he's with us through fruits of the spirit. And what's interesting is if you don't have clear sight, you cannot see the fruits of the spirit because you're blinded by the fruits of the flesh. And so you will gravitate towards individual whose flesh looks like it has produced wealth, material possessions, because your sight is tainted to only see the fruits of the flesh. They're blessed because their flesh has all of these things. They're blessed because they have this network that stands behind them. They're blessed because their bank account is full. They're blessed because of this and because of that. They don't have peace. They don't have joy. They suck at long suffering. One thing happens and they're online crying about it. But then they're the same ones who tell you don't cry online. Like crying is something that you should be ashamed of doing. It's a natural thing when you are human and being real and not wearing a mask. People have emotions. People have emotions. And what's funny is oftentimes the people who sometimes have the most loudest voice or the strongest voice when it comes to being advocates for something, it's led by a strong feeling, an emotion. They feel strongly about the thing that they're advocating for, and that's what causes them to speak. That's what causes them to produce, because they felt strongly about what was taking place. Whatever it is they're advocating for, it was a feeling that produced their desire to advocate for that thing. See, when you walk with Christ, when you serve Christ, when you have a relationship with Christ, he teaches you that feelings are not rulers, but they are a guide. A lot of people love to say, take your feelings out of it. When you are a prophet or prophetic, when you are just a person, period, who feels strongly as well, your feelings are a guide. They're not a ruler for you, but they are a guide. And the funny thing about both is that a ruler guides you on the length of a thing, but it does not rule you. It does not control you. It helps navigate the length, the distance that you need to make this mark. See, when your name glorifies God, sometimes the length and the distances that you go don't make sense to man, because they don't have the sight to see what's going on in the spirit. They only have sight for fleshly things. And that's the difference between somebody whose name glorifies themselves and somebody whose name glorifies God. Because someone whose name glorifies themselves, oh, they want the flesh to be appeased. I'm going to come for you because my flesh needs to be appeased by seeing you do and look whichever way, right? I'm going to come for you because my flesh didn't appreciate what you just did. So I'm going to attempt to kill your spirit because your name glorifies God. But my name glorifies me. That's the difference. When your name glorifies God, there's a difference in who does what and how it's done. When your name glorifies self, well, you need to be seen in bright lights. You'll try to make it seem like the person who you're trying to kill, well, they want this very same thing that I want. So I have to make it seem like they're only doing this because they want clout. And the whole time, because God has already set them up, they don't want clout. They don't even have to chase after clout. God put them in front of you because God qualified and called them. He didn't need you to give them clout. Their name glorifies him. Their name isn't to glorify you. Their name isn't their name to care. No. Mm-mm. Their assignment is to care about what God wants them to speak and what God wants them to do. It's not being concerned. No. And see, if you're a person who's desiring to have this walk with Christ, especially in these end times, and you want your name to glorify God, you're going to have to detach from your name meaning something to you. Because in order for your name to glorify God, you're going to have to realize that God is going to exalt and elevate your name. You're going to have to be okay with the very people who know that their time is limited, trying to make it seem like you're only doing this because you want fame. And if you can't take or tolerate that, it's going to break you. It's going to crush you. When your name glorifies God, there's nothing anybody can say about you that's going to kill your spirit. You're backed and strengthened by God. There's nothing that anybody can say or put on your name that's going to damage your name to the extent that God still won't get the glory out of you. Nothing. I'm a living witness to that. I can testify to that. Despite the slander that people, that organizations, that industries have thrown on my name indirectly, God can still get the glory out of my name. God can still get the glory out of me. And it doesn't matter what people say about me. It doesn't matter what people think about me. It shouldn't matter what people say about you. It shouldn't matter what people think about you. Because you have given up your life for Christ just as he gave up his life for you. So what is it that man can do or say that should bother you that much that Christ can't still get the glory out of your name? But some of you people who claim you want to see justice and you want righteousness done in this earth, you are the same ones who are unknowingly, some of you willing disciples of the enemy who is causing the chaos in this earth. You are the same individuals who will open your mouth to advocate for a thing. But you're also the same one putting nails in the hands of somebody else who needs advocacy. But the funny and beautiful thing is, those same people have the greatest advocate of all, and that's Jesus Christ. It doesn't matter about your feelings concerning that person because they know their name glorifies God. It does not have to glorify man. They have died to themselves enough to know that God is going to get the glory out of me. Even while the world is trying to pull the ugly out of me. God is going to get the glory out of me. Even when the world is trying to pull the ugly out of me. That's how rooted and sound we should be in whose we are. That's how sound we should be in knowing that our name glorifies God. If you're searching and seeking after fame and fortune, then you're worried about your name glorifying you. And see, that's why you spend so much time trying to tear down somebody else who's been exalted but didn't seek or didn't go the same route that you had to go. They're not looking for what you sought after. They're not looking for that. That's why you see some people and you're wondering if your name supposedly glorifies God. You have a mass collection that is supposedly glorifying God. Why is it that you're also glorifying somebody who does things to glorify the world? Did you seek after fame for you? For your personal exaltation? Did you fully die to yourself, or did somewhere along your journey for fame and fortune you forgot who your name is supposed to glorify? Your fruits started to look fleshly more than spiritually. Did you forget where your gifts came from? Or did you only seek after your name being exalted because you wanted it for you? We live in a time where people say, well, I use my gifts for God. And they don't even really truly still serve God. But because they went down that path originally, well, they got to keep it up. They gotta keep up with this appearance. Because now they got one foot in and one foot out. So they gotta dance on the line. Because well, they gotta meet their quota. My name doesn't glorify me. I've been trying to get people to keep my name out of their thoughts. But somehow, there are plenty of people who love to pretend like they don't see me, like they don't hear me. But they always got some type of shady comment, which is interesting because I thought you didn't see me or didn't hear me, even with the bad production quality. But it's interesting because you seem to see me. Because you seeing me glorifies God. It doesn't glorify me. I don't do things to be seen. I don't do things for fame and fortune. Moses didn't even want the job. Moses was like, God, get somebody else to do it. Why me? Jonah didn't want the job. Jonah said, I'm going to go over here. And I completely understand why Jonah did. I completely understand, Jonah. Jonah said no. I completely understand. Look at the different prophets. Look at the different disciples. Look at how many disciples started off, but how many fell off. People say you can't handle being famous. You can't handle being cyber stalked or gang stalked at the level that I'm being gang stalked. You can't handle that. You can't handle it. I don't have the material for security. I don't have the material fruit for a cybersecurity person to be in my back pocket to make things disappear and appear or to track and stalk down people. I don't have that material. I don't have the material to make a phone call and try to put a hit out on somebody. I don't have that. I went that. I don't have that. I don't have that. But I have Christ. I have joy. I have peace. I have love. I have long suffering. I have patience that is tested so much. But I have all of those things. And they're fruits of the Spirit. But you seeing me, it glorifies God. It glorifies God. You seeing me and not liking me don't got nothing to do with me. I don't even care. I don't care. Because being liked in these end times, especially serving Christ, how? If people love you and you serve Christ, you have to really truly question, are you serving the true and living God? Or are you serving the little God, the other Christ? Are you preaching and teaching a different Christ if people love you? Is your name truly glorifying Christ if the world loves you? And I'm not saying you got to be hated. Definitely not. But when you're doing certain jobs and certain roles for Christ, you're not going to be liked. And if you care about being liked, you're going to struggle even more. You're not going to have peace. A lot of people love to project onto me that I do things because I want man's validation. Man cannot validate me. That's my Father's job. My Father validates me. My Father speaks to me. My Father sees me. My Father loves me. Man can't validate me. It's not man's job to validate me. Man's job for the men, and when I say men, I'm men and women. Man's job is to serve Christ, is to do their best to look like Christ. But so many people who claim they love the Lord, they don't realize that they are serving another Christ. They take joy in seeing the suffering of individuals. They respect what they can see more than the unseen. Their faith is tied into what they can see. They believe that, oh, you have to serve God because, well, he's blessed you with these material things. You're famous. You worked hard to get famous. God must have did that for you. And the whole time, the person who might be using their gifts to share them and singing about God and doing all of these different things, somewhere along the line got perverted. And they not even serving God. It's just what pays their bills. So they carry on. That's why when you can listen to some of their content nowadays, when they're quote unquote preaching, what does what they talking about have to do with Christ? Everybody's like, how can you tell if it's a false prophet? What does what they're talking about have to do with Christ? How does what they're preaching and teaching direct you back to how Christ desires you to be? Does what they say edify you and convict you enough to say, well, God, search me? Am I walking like this? Am I talking like this? Do I look worldly, Lord? Do I hate my neighbor? But instead, there's so many preachers and teachers now. And a lot of their stuff up is wrapped up in the world. A lot of their stuff is wrapped up with ill intent to where they're trying to cut somebody down, not because God told them to do so. It's because they have a problem, an issue. And they're using God to try to wrap it up to make it sound nice and to make you believe that they're not a wolf. But people like myself and others see through their mask. And I know people are going to listen to this. Well, you do that. No. No, I point out what God tells me to point out. What's the difference between me and somebody else that's doing it? Check my fruits. Check my fruits. Am I going around hateful? No. Am I seeking after worldly things? No. Am I desiring to be? No. Half the time, I don't even be wanting to. I be wanting to be in my own little corner. Like the people that you see in the Bible. They were off in a corner. Minding their business. Staying away from drama. Unfortunately for me being gang stalked, drama loves to follow me. Because of my assignment with Christ, drama's going to follow me. But my call, your call, should be bigger than the hate and the drama that attaches because of what you're called to do. If you're desiring to do anything for Christ because you want your name glorified, and that's your intent going in, you already working backwards with Christ, and Christ's not going to be able to get the glory out of you like he wants to. Because you're going to be too busy focused on you getting the glory. Who does your name glorify? Are you so attached to your name that you can't endure? Are you so attached to your name that, oh, you got to respect my name. You got to respect my name. You got to respect what I do. You did all of that just for you? Or did you do it for God? See, that's why I can go speak a thing and it be a thing and I done move past it. Because I ain't speaking it for me. I'm speaking it for God. And God deals with everything else. My name is my name, but it's attached to God. More of us need to reflect and consider if our name is truly attached to Christ. Moses didn't have to do nothing. Moses wasn't even around to hear what was being said about him. God heard it, and God did something about it. I can testify to that. There's been so many things said about me, constantly said about me, every day, in and out. People go to sleep, wake up, and probably be thinking about what type of content they can do to throw shade. That's what they do. That's what they do. I go to sleep and I enjoy my rest. That's it. That's it. It'd be a new day, a new morning, every day. My name is attached to God. And because my name is attached to God, that means God can get the glory out of me. Can God get the glory out of you? Can God use you on the magnitude that he used Moses? To where he can trust you with thousands. Can God get the glory out of you? Or do you just want your name in lights because it's attached to you and you only? Well, you and the devil, but you know what I mean. Does your name, does your catalog, does it glorify God? Do your fruits glorify God? That's the message. Who does your name glorify? Does it glorify yourself? Does it glorify God? Can God look back at the works that you have done and say, yeah, that's my child? That one right there, that's mine. That's my baby. Can God look at the works that you have done and say that? Can God look at your heart and say that? Not just doing works to be seen by man, right? Because when we do, when we give, when we help, it's not to have validation and to be glorified by man. Because the word tells us that's the only glory that we're going to get. God's not going to glorify you when you only do things to be seen by man. He glorifies what you do in private. So when you're out serving your community, but then you go and you brag and you share it, that's the only glory or validation you're going to get is from the people that glorified you. God doesn't glorify it because you did it to be seen by man. There are people who have become stuck in this me, pick me, choose me. Yeah, I'm a part of the group. I'm willing to be a part of the group. So pick me, choose me. You use me, I don't care. Sacrifice this, take that. And don't get me wrong, there are sacrifices and there are losses when it comes to serving Christ. Especially if you desire to be as close as the disciples were. They had to give up everything. I'm sure if you were to lived in that time, they probably would have looked at you crazy too. Because where's all your stuff? Oh, you don't have nothing? Oh, that's all you got? You ain't got nothing new? You can't afford this, you can't afford that? I can afford to do the will of my Father. I can afford that. Yeah, it costs me quite a bit, but it's a cost with a great reward. Can God get the glory out of you like that? I'm not telling you that you have to give up everything, but I'm telling you, if you're attached to everything, if your faith is attached to what you can see and not the unseen things, how does God get the glory out of you like that? How can He get the glory out of you like that? How? How? Who is your name attached to? Does it glorify you, yourself, or does it glorify God? So thank you to those who tuned in, but I'm about to tap out. So I will catch y'all on a different day. Yes, I'm in my car. Yes, it's dark, but I'm confident you got the message. I'm confident you got the message. I'm sure I'll see the fruits of that sprinkled on the internet somewhere. It's one of the interesting things about being gang stalked and cyber stalked. Every part of your life is watched and monitored. And the beautiful part of it is that when you know your name is attached to God, you can still wake up every day with joy and peace and love in your heart. Some days it's a battle because the pick me's who make it harder for the victims who need to speak up by joining in with the foolery of the people who are stalking individuals, harassing individuals, who have victimized people. You pick me's of chaos and drama and abuse, even though you advocate for all this other stuff, you are pick me's in the problem, in the equation. Look real strong. It's still a pick me. There are people afraid to speak up because the burden of having the world hate them because they're so attached to a man's name more than they are attached to God is why people who need to speak up, who need to share their stories, don't say nothing. Because they know the mindset of the people on the lower level to jump in and defend the very monsters who made them a victim in the first place. They fear the backlash of the systems who network and are connected to the very monsters that so many of you defend. And that's why more people who need to speak up don't speak up. The crosses are weighted differently. The weights are different. Some of you don't realize that you add weight to it. Some of you realize that you do, and you take pride in it. And then you get mad when there's a hand that's helping the individual that you're trying to weigh down. But it's because their name glorifies God. Does your name glorify God? Are you going to attach your name to Christ so he can help you carry the weights that are going to come in these end times? So you can bear the fruits of the Spirit and endure in these end times. Because if you sit down and you take inspection and you realize that you've been one of the people who have added weights to someone else's cross, you're going to be one of the main ones that struggle in these end times. You're going to be one of the main ones. It's the truth. You're going to struggle because you spent so much of your time piling up stones that had you kept and grinded and dealt with for yourself, you would have had the strength to endure. But instead, you were throwing stones. Some person creeping up. So who does your name glorify? Does it glorify you or does it glorify God? That's what you're going to have to ask yourself in these end times. Today, tonight. That's what you're going to have to ask yourself. This car right here, I don't know who that is. But it looks like one of them cars that always be popping up where I'm at. It's a little hatchback in the back, in the bottom, in the back, whatever you call it. It's one of the little small white cars. But who does your name glorify? Does it glorify you or does it glorify God? Love you later. Have a great night. Oh, y'all want to see the car again? I don't know who that is. Everywhere I go, somebody pops up where I'm at. Love you later.